Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked, blissed? Dr. Shealy, are you blissed?
Yes.
Yeah. Dr. Shealy, before I get into some of the things I have on my list, is there anything that you'd like to share with us?
Nope, I'm open sesame today.
Okay. All right, so here's something kind of interesting that I've learned. It probably wouldn't be discussed on most broadcasts, but here we go, because there are some health issues related to this. So if you think about developments, home housing developments in neighborhoods that have been built already, and you look at, let's say it's a brand new development, and you look at the sales of the houses. Typically, the ones highest on the hill get sold first. The ones on the bottom of the hill get sold last. And then, so the ones at the lowest elevation seem to get sold last. And that's because people realize that water runs downhill. Well, here's an interesting thing. So let's say there's a house at the bottom of a hill in a neighborhood, and the sewer pipe is at the lowest point of that neighborhood, okay? It still runs downhill, but it's at the lowest point. Well, what they do, let's say that homeowner says, yeah, but I've got to have a bathroom in the basement. So the basement's the lowest point of the house. So what they do is they put in a tank in the basement, under the basement floor. Let's say it holds 25 gallons. What happens is when you flush that basement toilet, everything that gets flushed down the toilet goes into this tank, and the lid of the tank is at the floor level. And then in this tank is a grinder and a pump. So it's a pump with a grinder in it, kind of like a waste disposal in your kitchen sink. So everything gets ground up and pushed uphill through a small pipe, like 1.5 inches. It's liquefied waste, it's brown, typically, and it goes uphill to the sewer pipe, and then it goes out. There's a couple problems with that. One is if the electricity fails and people don't know that they have this kind of a system in their house, and they flush the toilet and flush the toilet and flush the toilet, pretty soon the basement starts flooding. That's one thing. Another thing is, since that grinder, pump, and tank is at the lowest level in the neighborhood, if the grid goes down, all sewage is running that way. And if there's no electricity to pump out the sewage that comes from other houses through the sewer pipe into the basement tank under the floor, that basement will start to flood first. So the reason I'm mentioning this is I've never heard anybody talk about this on the air or anywhere else. And these pumps are not just like sump pumps. They have a grinder in them, so they're an expensive pump. They can cost $1,500 just for the pump. And when a plumber comes out to fix one of these things, he brings a hazmat suit with him because he is diving into raw sewage. And that's where the medical question comes in. So a couple points. One, if you're going to buy a house and it has one of these lids in the basement, in like the utility room area, near the furnace.
Don't
it might be. Yeah. Don't buy it. Right. Because you know with absolute certainty that pump is going to fail. It's certain. You just don't know when. And then are you going to be able to get another one when the supply chain gets a little tight. So here comes the medical question. When we have to handle raw sewage in a grid down situation, do you have any precautions for us? I mean, we want to wear, rubber gloves. We don't, we want to wear a mask so we don't breathe, inhale any of the spray. What else should we be concerned about, Dr. Shealy, handling raw sewage?
Obviously, once you finish, as easily as you take off all your clothes, and ideally I would throw them away. If you could somehow put them in a strong bleach solution and let it soak overnight before washing them, maybe. But I wouldn't want to ever go near those clothes again. Socks, shoes, everything. And, of course, that's when I would take at least 5 grams of vitamin C immediately.
Okay. So wash with bleach if you can, but one of the problems may be, and I'm not trying to make this more complicated, class. I'm trying to share with you some additional thoughts. Absolutely. If the water's running, wash the clothes. But if the water's not running, that's going to be tough to do. So then you want to discard the clothes. And you want to wash yourself. Now, Dr. Shealy, would you recommend, and I've seen people do this in Virginia, and this is a situation where the water's running. I've seen people put about a few drops of chlorine bleach, plain old chlorine bleach that you'd use with your clothes in the washing machine, in a tub of water, and take a bath with that. Would you recommend that in this case?
I would say a teaspoon.
Okay. Teaspoon of chlorine bleach. So this is not something that you're going to want to do every day, but in an emergency situation, you're saying that a teaspoon of bleach in a tub of water, and make sure you kill those germs that are on your body from the raw handling of raw sewage. Dr. Shealy, I got to tell you, when I see the kinds of things that are happening in our country, I'm seeing the newly elected Congress trash, like this woman who is using the F-bomb on Donald Trump. It's an absolute outrage. And when you see these award winners of television using the F-bomb on TV, saying, I really probably shouldn't have said that. I just can't believe that we have devolved into this state. And because of that, I'm thinking, how is this going to get better? I think it's just going to get worse, because I think people's attitudes are changing for the worst. They're less likely to help. They're more angry with themselves, their family, everyone around them, in their cars. It doesn't look like a good outcome to me. And because of that,
I think she needs a quart of bleach thrown over her head.
Yeah, she was absolutely outrageous. Class, we're talking about this Congress trash. And that's I could say Congress tramp. Now, that might be appropriate. But there's this newly elected Congress tramp, Congress trash, who used the F word about Donald Trump. I'm bringing up the article right now. It's absolutely over the top. I'm sure you've all heard of it. And here's the article. dailymail.co.uk. No apologies. Anti-Trump lawmaker Rashida, R-A-S-H-I-D-A, Tlaib, T-A-L, the screen keeps moving. T-L-A-I-B, who vowed Democrats will impeach that mother blanker, Donald Trump. Nancy Pelosi says, her language is no worse than the president's. Really? I've never heard the president say anything like that. So here we have a woman who's a mother using like the worst of all possible profanity publicly about Donald Trump. And this Congress tramp, Rashida Tlaib, is allegedly representing people. And people are cheering her, thinking that this is wonderful. I can't believe it. I can't believe how far we have fallen. And I've said this publicly. Someone uses language like that, they are not welcome in my house. I don't want it around me. I don't want it around Mrs. Finelli. I don't want it around our children. I don't want it around anybody else. Dr. Shealy, your comments?
Oh, well, I don't want her in Congress, but I think she should be impeached.
Well, I think she should be thrown out.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. And I wrote a little one-sentence bill that I thought, I don't have it in front of me, but it was just one sentence that says, to recap what it is, if a person who works for the government, whether elected, selected, appointed, or hired, if that person uses any of the 7 words that are not allowed by the FCC, that person will be immediately fired. All credentials will be immediately withdrawn and removed and returned to the employer. And that person will lose all compensation.
Then you would throw out over 50% of Congress.
That's a great start. I love it. That's a great start. 50% of getting rid of 50% of Congress is wonderful.
Well, actually, be closer to 60, but that's okay.
I'm okay with 90. I don't trust them. I don't like them. But anyway, I just wanted to share that. It seems that I was talking with a plumber type last night. And this guy is trying to help. This guy is trying to secure a job doing some plumbing. And I was speaking on behalf of the homeowner. Homeowner put me on the phone and said, would you talk to this plumber guy? And the plumber says, well, I don't know if it's this friggin' thing or that friggin' thing, or I don't know, what the, really, is using the word friggin'. Now, I don't like that word, and I've only used it to describe what this guy's saying.
Well, he just did not get your endorsement, I hope.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. What are people thinking? So here's a guy trying, the homeowner is a woman, and he's using that word in front of her to me, and he's trying to get the job. I sent an email back saying, don't let that guy back in your house. Just one more comment about these grinder pumps. So I looked it up. What does it cost to replace one of these grinder pumps to pump raw sewage up from the basement, to a sewage pipe? Well, according to the internet, there's a huge difference in the replacement cost of grinder pumps, which have a $2,000 to $3,000 retail price, depending on installation and labor. So you're looking at a really expensive repair bill if you have to have a grinder pump replaced.
Well, that would be probably only half or less the total cost with the cleanup.
Yeah. What a mess. Absolutely. So, class, think about that. When you go buy a home, make sure that if it's low or you've got a basement, make sure if you have one of those things, because you are setting yourself up for a serious problem. I just can't believe that these things are installed in homes. It makes no sense to me to pump sewage uphill. It makes no sense. You know that if you have an incinerator or garbage disposal in your sink, you know that they fail. Well, why would a sewage grinder pump not fail? Why? They do. And usually they put on a special outlet. It's only one thing on that circuit, which is the grinder pump. Why? Because if it fails, you're going to flood the basement. If that circuit breaker trips. And then they also put an alarm on there, so that if the pump does fail and the sewage level rises in this container just under the floor, if it starts rising, well then you know it, and the alarm goes off, and it's 85 decibels. It's like a jackhammer to make sure you hear
it's
it.
Too late already.
That's right. That's right. Dr. Shealy, Eisenhower, Dwight David Eisenhower, had a pretty interesting way of making decisions. And I thought, and I know that you are so busy and you're able to write books and see patients and talk on the radio on multiple programs, yours and this one and others, and speak. So you have to be very productive in order to accomplish those things. Eisenhower used a box with four blocks in this box to make decisions. And the things that he considered was, well, is this not important? Is it important? Is it urgent or not urgent? So what he did was he said, is it important and urgent? If it is, he would do it now. If it's important and not urgent, he would schedule a time to do it later. If it was not important, but it was urgent, he would delegate it to someone else. If it's not important and it's not urgent, he would delete it from the list. That's a pretty interesting way of approaching how to get things done in a priority with limited resources. And the limited resource, chief among them, is time. Do you have a method that you use, Dr. Shealy, for how to decide what to do first?
Well, I think I don't have a box with those four drawers in it. I do it in my mind, and if it's urgent, I will. If I've opened it, I'm going to go ahead and answer it. If it's not urgent, then I look at the next one down the line until I've covered all the urgent ones first. And I would say, if it requires an hour of my time, I delete it. It's almost nothing that I will get by email, and I'm willing to spend an hour to listen, to watch some YouTube or something like that. I don't have the time to do even 10-minute YouTubes that aren't absolutely essential to my life.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I get a lot of YouTube videos, so many links to so many YouTube videos that I can't absolutely positively, there's not enough time. Even if I had 3 computers running at the same time, even if I could watch all 3 and listen to all 3 and pay attention to all 3, I still could not get it done. So I have that problem. People call me and say, hey, have you seen that link? And I go, yeah, I saw the link, but I didn't watch it. And I hate to hurt their feelings, but I can't do it because I'm trying to run a farm. Class, Dr. Norman Shealy is with us. If you'd like to call us, we'll pay for the call. 866-582-9933. 866-582-9933. Telephone listen line if you'd like to take us with you as you travel. 605-477-3249. 605-477-3249. Dr. Shealy, when I was at the university many decades ago, I learned that there's another way of making decisions, and I kind of implement this often. And it goes like this. There are 3 levels of priorities. Now, there's lots of ways of, analyzing how to make decisions. And this is just one more way. So there are 3 levels of priorities, and we'll call them A, B, and C. A will be the most important things that you really should get done. But, typically they take more time. Typically they're more complicated. Typically they're more involved. Typically they're the ones that are hardest to face. You go, geez, it's a big job. Wow, that's a big job. And you know that there's going to be, a lot more time in that. Then B, priorities would be kind of less important, less complicated. And then the C priorities are the ones you can bang out really quickly. And a C priority might be cleaning out the junk drawer in the kitchen. We all have these junk drawers where we throw in pens and pencils and paper clips that are too good to throw out but not good enough to use. So we all have these pens that almost work, paper clips that we might someday need but probably not likely, and these parts of things that, we will forget what they're for, in a couple of years anyway. But we just keep throwing them in the junk drawer. We have this collection. So, we could say, well, you know what? I could do this. I could clean out the junk drawer, pat myself on the back that, you know what? I actually got that junk drawer cleaned out. But it really doesn't amount to anything because it wasn't important in the first place. So that would be a C priority. So one of the problems is that we look for these easy-to-do, instant gratification things that don't amount to a hill of beans. So one way of addressing that is I try to do the important things first, even though they're harder, even though they're more complicated. But I just wanted to share that thought. Any comments, Dr. Shealy, on that?
Well, I'm with you all the way, Big Blue.
We agree on almost everything, if not everything. Okay, so here's a question I have. I got an email that a friend of ours has passed away. And he was in his 80s, and this email said that he passed away at home from heart complications after routine prostate surgery. And I'm thinking, if he knew going into that prostate surgery that he was going to die of heart complications, I doubt he'd have the prostate surgery. Dr. Shealy, is that something that happens? Getting heart complications?
Let's face it.
After prostate surgery?
Any surgery carries that risk. Open heart surgery, for instance, coronary bypass carries a 3 to 4% death risk. Most surgeries not that high, but anesthesia carries depending upon the procedure, 0.5% up to 0.5% risk in almost any kind of surgery. So you can't undergo that kind of major intervention with 100% safety. Now, of course, if he had routine prostate surgery, it takes me back to the 60 years to what I call the roto-rooter approach, the TUR, transurethral resection, which is literally like putting a roto-rooter corkscrew in it. I mean, it's a horrible, unbelievable procedure. And interestingly, the urologists in Springfield still do it and don't do a 10 times or 100 times safer procedure called green laser. I don't know why they're ignorant or stubborn or whatever, but all surgery carries risk. Every drug you take carries a risk. Listen to the ads on television. And death. And so, in acute illness, conventional medicine is darn good. Not perfect, but good. In chronic illness, I don't know any. I can't think of a single chronic disease for which I would personally allow myself to undergo conventional medicine.
Strong statement. Dr. Shealy, so this TURP, the old roto-rooter corkscrew type procedure for enlarged prostate when men have trouble urinating and a slow dribble rather than a normal stream of urine comes out. Eventually they succumb and say, I got to do something. So this corkscrew, this roto-rooter, is a bloody mess, isn't it? And literally?
Oh, unbelievable, yeah. You'll bleed for up to a week or 10 days afterwards.
And when the patient is all done and all healed and weeks go by, does this male have erectile dysfunction as a result of this, or is that not related?
I'd say a huge majority of the time, yes.
Okay, so if they have erectile dysfunction as a result of this, and then their cardiologist puts them on some heart medicine, are they going to have more erectile dysfunction as a result of that?
Well, every antihypertensive drug carries that risk, and every so-called antidepressant or anti-anxiety drug carries that risk. So, yeah, pretty common.
So now I'm wondering if the other team, the evil empire, is try to get us sick enough so that we're on antihypertensive drugs, anti-anxiety drugs, heart medications,
and statins.
So that statins, all of those, so that we have erectile dysfunction, so we don't reproduce as much, so they don't have as many of us to deal with and kill in other ways.
Common sense, the uncommon commodity.
Okay. I was reading an article about food additives, Dr. Shealy. It's amazing. It's amazing what we are doing to ourselves. And here's the article. It says, headline, Daily Mail, are food additives causing celiac disease? Widely used, and they call it, quote, meat glue, end quote, may be driving the rise in people who react to gluten, this study suggests. So meat glue, that's something I've never heard of. One of these, this additive called microbial, MICROBIAL, transglutaminase, TRANSGLUTAMINASE, is also known as meat glue. And it's a preservative that's used to make everything from deli meats to baked goods last longer and give them better texture. And they're saying that this substance, this compound, may be the blame for autoimmune response that makes gluten inedible to celiac disease sufferers. So here we've got this meat glue, which is a preservative that may be causing people to suffer from celiac disease. Is that something new, Dr. Shealy?
Well, it's not new. Stuff like that has been going on for decades. More important, of course, to me is the fact that you can't buy any product in this country that wasn't raised in some kind of purified greenhouse that doesn't have glyphosate in it. Because 65% of all rain that falls in this country has glyphosate in it. Mm-hmm. And that's about as poison as arsenic.
So, is there something that we can do? I mean, how do we get away from it, or is it impossible? Is it like trying to breathe? It's impossible.
It is impossible. I know no way you can truly get away from it. You grow 100% of your food inside a greenhouse that somehow blocks glyphosate air from coming in. Filter the air to move glyphosate coming into the greenhouse. I mean, I don't know a way of doing all of that.
You know, over the years, people who are in the survival and preparedness mindset have said, I want to set up this gutter system so I can catch the rainwater and use my roof as a catchment diverter system to catch the rainwater so I can, water my garden and have water for drinking and things like that. I think it's crazy because, my roof on our farmhouse, our roof is a composition shingle roof that has these little, tiny sand-like stones that are colored to be the color of our roof. So there's red. Some people have red roofs and black roofs and white roofs and green roofs and brown roofs and tan roofs. So the stones are colored, and they're stuck onto the shingle, composition shingle, with tar. Well, it's a great surface to hold whatever is flying through the air. The dust, the particles, the radioactivity, the glyphosate, whatever other toxins are in the air, bird poop, dead bugs, and then it rains, and then all that is washed down into the gutter, and you can catch that and put that on your garden or drink it. I mean, it's crazy to me. Do you agree, or have I lost my mind?
No, I agree all the way.
Okay. All right. So the green laser, back to the green laser, it seems to me from what I've researched that if men live long enough, we'll all have prostate problems, enlarged prostate, right? Is that correct?
Darn close.
Darn close. Okay. So what do we do, Dr. Shealy?
When it gets to a state where you are up 2 or 3 times a night, I would not delay any longer. I would go up to here. I would go to Columbia, Missouri, and get the green laser treatment, and tell the urologist in Springfield to cram it up their own bladder.
Yeah. Okay. So you tell the urologist, okay, let's go for the corkscrew, but you go first. So the Golden Globe Awards honor the best in film and television, so they say. Well, there's this gal by the name of Patricia Arquette. So she's accepting live her Golden Globe Award, and she drops the F-bomb twice. And then she's twice in the same speech. So there she is live in front of all these people accepting this award for being the best that we have to offer in television and film. And it was allegedly unplanned. These actri dress up in expensive, ridiculous-looking costumes, and they're in TV, and people watch them get these awards. So she drops the F-bomb twice, and then she apologizes. She apologizes because she realizes it was a dumb thing to do. Okay? Too late. And here's her quote. I'm so sorry. I know you can't take it back. Can you? I didn't plan that, she said. That's just one more example. The cops, when they tell you to get down, they use the F word. They tell you, they scream it. They think that's, normal language. I wonder if they talk to their wives that way. I wonder if they talk to their girlfriends that way. I wonder if they talk to their preacher that way. What do they do if they're Roman Catholic and they go to confession? Bless me, Father, boy, have I sinned. I was on patrol yesterday, and I used the F-bomb 47 times in the morning, and 58 times during lunch, and 76 times during the afternoon, and only twice at my wife.
Oh, I love you.
Well, I got to tell you, I don't want, Dr. Shealy, I'm not kidding. I don't want people who don't think about the consequences of their actions at our home. I don't want them here. I really mean that. I've decided that I'm going to have a shorter fuse. I'm going to speak out faster, and I'm going to tell people when they do things that I don't like. Now, I may get shot for doing that, and I might have to return fire. But I wasn't raised this way. I don't remember teachers dropping profanity in the classroom.
The Scoutmaster didn't either, by the way.
Right. The Scoutmaster didn't either. Dr. Shealy, in medical, during your internship, did doctors use profanity when they were talking about their patients on the operating table?
Never.
I would, if I were under anesthesia, and I woke up, I'd be outraged. And as soon as I were able to, I'd fire that doctor. So the dentist says open wide, oh my, that's a big friggin' cavity. It doesn't happen with people you trust. And I've got to say it this way. When someone uses profanity to win an argument, they lose the argument right then and there. Because I realize that they're not smart enough. They don't have a lexicon deep enough, wide enough, big enough, tall enough to use logic. And I don't want to debate them because they have to revert to a 4-word lexicon. It's nuts. I got that off my chest. I feel so much better. Dr. Shealy, when we come back, can we talk about the state of brainwaves, alpha, beta, theta, delta, and the frequencies, and the relationship to the heart rate? Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Dr. Norman Shealy is with us. Website, normshealy.com, NORMSHEALY.com. Dr. Shealy has an office in Springfield, Missouri, and you can go see Dr. Shealy. You can call for an appointment to talk with him or visit him, 417-351-5221, 417-351-5221. That's the office number for the clinic in Springfield, Missouri. And we are in Central Time here in our part of Missouri. Dr. Shealy, we're talking about the frequency. So there's alpha, beta, theta, delta, and these frequencies, from my understanding, are between a half a cycle per second, delta, to about 30 cycles per second, beta. Is that right?
Well, that is the usual. Now, for people who are more creative and more detached, if you will, gamma is also extremely common.
Okay. And what is the frequency for gamma?
Anywhere from 31 to 100 cycles, but the ideal frequency for true optimal detachment is 40 cycles.
Okay, 40. Okay. All right. So my question, I was laying awake last night thinking about this. I was thinking about the delta, which is the deep sleep state of mind. And I was thinking about the heart rate. So if delta is about 1 cycle per second, which would be beat, 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 that's about the rate of the heart, isn't it?
Well, actually, the average person has a heart rate more like 72, because the average person is on the verge of stress, on the edge of stress all the time. But a person who is pretty stress-free will have a heart rate around 60, yes.
Okay. So I just checked I have one of these pulse oximeters, and I just checked my pulse rate at this moment on the air, 65. And I just raced across the house to get back into the studio. So my pulse rate is 66.
Well, that's good. I mean, considering even talking, that's good.
Okay.
My pulse right now, talking, is 70.
Okay. So what does that mean, that it's close to the heart rate, or is that just an irrelevant coincidence?
Well, again, the delta is the deepest relaxation before you fall asleep. And officially, delta is anywhere from 1 to 3 cycles per second. And that is sort of preparation for sleep. Oh, by the way, my pulse is now down to 59. I've relaxed.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So is there really no real correlation or with, because I know that when I'm sleeping, my heart rate goes down. It goes
Unless
lower.
you're having a dream that could raise it. Because the frequency of the brain during sleep is actually all over the place. If you have a dream that has any kind of stress in it, your frequency can go up to 70 or 80 easily.
Okay.
Now, here again, talking, my pulse is ranging most of the time in the low 60s.
Mm-hmm. Is that where most people should be, Dr. Shealy?
That's the ideal, yes. Now, people who are physically active. Get adequate exercise. Also, when they're not exercising, have a lower or an at-rest pulse that's lower. In fact, at times when I've been in much better physical shape than I can get into these days, my pulse will go down as low as 50.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I don't know if mine gets down in the 50s. It might once in a while. Okay. When, Dr. Shealy, if someone's going to have surgery or someone's going to have a colonoscopy where there's a possibility of, removal of polyps and bleeding, what vitamins, minerals, supplements, foods should be discontinued so that the patient is not at further risk of, bleeding more as a result of these procedures? What would you recommend?
The number one thing is to decrease things like aspirin or any of the over-the-counter so-called non-steroidal steroids, non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, because they really do increase the risk of bleeding and other problems as well. Now, as supplements, probably the number one supplement to decrease for at least a week before is vitamin E, but also you might want to decrease your omega-3 fatty acids for about a week before that procedure as well.
Okay, and vitamin C as well?
No, as long as you're not taking more than a couple of grams a day, I think vitamin C is fine.
Okay. How about herbal teas? Is there a tea that we should avoid taking, or licorice, or anything else that we just might eat?
I don't, and I'm sure there are herbs that would do that, and unfortunately I don't know them.
Okay. What about vitamin K? Is that something that we should consider?
Well, vitamin K is good.
Okay.
Vitamin K helps clotting, so I wouldn't stop that before any procedure.
Okay. How about astaxanthin?
I think that vitamin A in its various forms are good.
Okay. So if a person were going to have these procedures, whether it be some kind of a surgery where there might be bleeding or a colonoscopy, what would be a beneficial thing to eat or take? What would you do?
I think for a colonoscopy, I don't know anything else that I would stop.
Okay. All right. So the next question, or the next comment I wanted to make, you and I have been talking about male fertility, sperm count going down. For years we've been talking about lower. Pretty soon, if this continues on this trend, we might not be able to reproduce at all. That might be the thing that takes out humanity.
Exactly. When I was in medical school, which is only 60, a little over 60 years now, the average sperm count was 150 million. Now it is 40 million. And at 20 million, we become infertile. So if we go in the next 50 years as much as we have in the last 50, we're going to wipe ourselves out.
And what do you think is causing this, Dr. Shealy? Because
poison, estrogen, among other things. Detergents, pesticides, herbicides, all of these things that increase the risk, the concentration of estrogen, the production of estrogen, are not good for men. We don't need a significant amount of estrogen.
And would you say that these estrogenic compounds are in things like, dishwashing detergent? How about shampoo?
Probably.
How about conditioner? Shampoo, first you shampoo your hair, then you put this.
Again, probably. And I have to tell you, once or twice in my life I've tried conditioner, but I've never used it regularly. I don't feel a need for it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, here's an unbelievable product. And it's called Cool Men. COOLMEN. One word. Cool Men. And it's recommended that cool men wear Cool Men about 12 to 16 hours a day. Now, what this thing does is it lowers the temperature of a man's testicles by a couple degrees. So, this thing is to help people men who are trying to have to conceive by lowering the temperature of their testicles by 2 degrees for optimum sperm production. I can't believe it.
Well, I can't imagine that 2 degrees would make that much difference. But halitosis, perhaps. Now, we know that Cool Man is designed to be worn discreetly. A normal sperm count is considered to be at least 20 million. That's minimum for survival. So their ad in itself means to me they don't know what they're talking about, because they said a normal of at least 20 million. Well, I would consider that on the brink of suicide.
Unbelievable that we've arrived at this point where we're even thinking about these things. And, I imagine they say they're scientists, but whoever developed this, I mean, really? How did we get to the point where we're thinking about cooling testicles? Wow. So I think you've been warning us about this huge problem that we're having. And wouldn't the obvious thing to do would be to avoid wearing whitey tighties and switch to boxers? Wouldn't that be the easiest thing to do?
Boxers are infinitely better now. We've known that.
So during this broadcast, there was a news piece about the partial government shutdown, and I have a comment. I'm all in favor of building the wall. So my position is I'd like to build the wall. And if Congress wants to cause the president to not budge, I'm all for it. I'm all for the government shutdown. And we have a family member who is not being paid because of this. And I still think it's great. Now, this person may lose their home. And here's why. So imagine, class, that there's a neighborhood, and let's say the neighborhood was built 20 years ago. And people move in, and many of the people still have that same home. They're living in the same home. So they have a mortgage that is probably a 30-year amortization on that note. So they've owned the home for 20 years. They've got 10 more years on it, on the note. They're paying every month. But because they live near Washington, D.C., or within a 2-hour commuting distance of Washington, D.C., many people in their neighborhood have government jobs, and many of them are involved in the shutdown, and they're not being paid. So they can't pay their mortgage. But that's okay. They've got savings, right? Well, according to what I've been reading, most people can't come up with $400 for an emergency. So if they have a $1,000 or $1,500 mortgage note on their home, and they have $400 in savings, pretty soon they're not going to be able to pay their mortgage note. Pretty soon the house is going to be, or the home is going to be foreclosed on, and so is the neighbors and the next neighbors and next neighbors, and pretty soon you're going to see a fire sale of foreclosed homes, which is going to drive down the value of everybody's home. I think it's coming. I really think it's coming. So I just wanted to let people think about they may have to be preparing for Plan B because of the government shutdown, causing homes to be sold and foreclosures to happen. And they may be thrown out of their own home. So that's called random walk. In the financial world, we learned about random walk. Everything's bumping along just fine until something that you don't think of happens. So people are thinking the president wanted this wall on our southern border, and Congress is telling them to take a hike. They're not going to do it. He says, oh, yes, we are. They say, no, we're not. And then he says, okay, we shut down. Everything was fine. And so now not having a $5 billion border wall causes tens of thousands or more people losing their homes. Did they think of the border wall causing this? Probably not. So there are unintended consequences, and there's random walk. Random walk is something happened you don't think is going to affect you, and boom, it affects you. So I just wanted to share that thought. And here's another thing along that same line of thinking. And this is something that I read on the internet. And it was a comment by someone responding to an article. I don't remember the article, but I have the quote. And here it is, quote, I remember my first job in high school. The company had 120 employees and was owned by a Depression-era veteran. Someone who actually had vacation time asked him, meaning the owner of the company, for 2 contiguous weeks off. So this employee had vacation time coming, and he asked for 2 weeks in a row. The owner of the company said, if I can do without anyone for 2 weeks, I can do without them for 2 months. And if I can do without you for 2 months, I can do without you. And I think that's absolutely true. And relate that to the government shutdown, where most of us say, you know what, I don't feel this government shutdown at all. Heck, we can fire 40% of the federal employees, and we'd hardly notice. If that's the case, why are we bringing them back? Why not just do without them? We don't need them. Just a thought. So I've got some more questions for Dr. Shealy. Dr. Shealy, do you have any things that you'd like that are on your list you'd like to share with us?
Whatever you open, I like to discuss everything.
Okay. Dr. Norman Shealy's with us, normshealy.com. Dr. Shealy, your clinic is situated in Greene County, Missouri, isn't it?
That is correct.
Okay. Well, sometimes our expectations are lowered even further. So here is the headline for the Springfield News Leader. That's the newspaper that serves Springfield and surrounding villages. Here it is. And I know you have a less than stellar opinion of the men that are wearing blue and black costumes known as the cops. Here it is, headline, former Greene County deputy sentenced to 20 years for sexually abusing a young girl. Goes on to say, a former Greene County Sheriff's deputy is sentenced to 20 years in prison Friday after pleading guilty to sexually abusing a young girl. Joe Newlin, Newlon, 58 years old, addressed the court before the judge handed down the sentence. Quote, I messed up. I will live with this the rest of my life. It's been terrifying for me, Newlin said. I've lost family. Some of the things the attorney said is speculation, but I admit I did wrong. So here's a guy, you dial 911, and they send these guys in costumes with guns and billy clubs and tasers and handcuffs. And in the trunk, they've got AR-15s and shotguns and ammunition. And they have radios so they can call more guys of the same ilk. And they show up. And here's a guy who knows, who knew, who admitted that he was doing the wrong thing by abusing a 12-year-old. Unbelievable.
should have thought of that before he put his pants down.
Yeah, and I have a feeling he's going to be welcomed in the clink by inmates who are going to shorten his life expectancy on this planet. I don't think pedophiles are welcomed in the United States prison system. I think there's a special kind of treatment that they get when pedophiles show up to spend time in the clink. And even worse than that, when cops show up in the clink, they get even a more special treatment. So this guy's got a double whammy coming to him because of his abuse of power. So why are we mentioning this today? Dr. Shealy, we're reading more and more and more about this. We're reading more about the failure of people to have morals, values. Do you have a feel for how we got here? I mean,
interestingly, I've been reading a trilogy of and it's giving a fictionalized but very accurate historical overview of what was happening back, let's say, 500 to 600 years ago. And Vince, I thought the world was bad now, but back in those days, it was even worse, believe it or not. Europe, all of the European countries were, in my opinion, evil, even beyond what we think of today. In other words, I haven't seen a portion of history where the world was in good shape. The time of Queen Elizabeth I was about as horrible a time in the world as ever has existed. And so, yes, I think it's worse today than it was 100 years ago, but it's never been good.
So do you think it's based on the sum of all individual greed?
Of course.
People, okay.
Individual greed and individual crime. I mean, to me, any sexual abuse is unacceptable, period. And yet the Catholic Church has been known for this since its beginning, essentially. And it isn't just related to the Catholic Church. I had an aunt and uncle who were Baptists, and my aunt said if she saw the Baptist preacher coming up the drive, she locked the door and hid in the closet. she wouldn't let him in the house.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not laughing, Dr. Shealy, and I'll tell you why. Because when we lived in Virginia, praise the Lord, there were a lot of Baptists, Southern Baptists in Virginia, in this very rural area in Virginia where we moved. And it was a lot of farms there, small farms. And we were asked to, hey, you guys are Catholic, you want to come to our church, and meaning the Baptist church. And what I learned was one of the Baptist preachers was helping the women overcome some of their problems, their marital problems, their family problems, by getting them to lie down and perform for him. So this Baptist preacher was servicing the wives of the flock. I got to tell you, if I met this guy and he did that to my wife,
I would want to amputate.
He would be
amputated.
Well, yeah.
That's the only, in my opinion, that's the only just punishment for someone like that. Don't put him in jail, just cut it off.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking that he'd probably be a few quarts low on blood. If they checked him, they'd say, hey, you've been leaking.
Well, one way is to cut it off and not stop the bleeding.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I would not stand for that. And this cop, this former Greene County sheriff's deputy pervert, pedophile, same thing. Same thing. I think we need to get back to, if we are absolutely certain, absolutely without any doubt whatsoever, that people have committed these heinous crimes, they need to be put on public display. And I believe that, the floggings, the things, the punishment that should be meted out should be public.
I think it should be caning. I like the idea of caning in public square.
That's what I mean. Shirt off, strip down to your boxer shorts, and then cane these people in public, and then I think, and invite the public to watch this, and then I believe that people would say, oh my God, that guy was bleeding and crying and wailing and in such pain. I certainly wouldn't want to shoplift. I certainly wouldn't want to be a pedophile. I certainly wouldn't want to be a white-collar criminal. I certainly wouldn't want to take bribes as Congress parasites do, or other government selected employees do, because of the punishment that would be meted out in the public square.
I'm with you all the way, Big Blue.
I think the time has come for this. So in that line of thinking, I was reading from the Washington Examiner a post that indicates from a survey how people look at occupations in terms of honesty and ethical standards. How many of them are rated very high. So, for example, the highest rated occupation in the country is nurses. So people look at nurses as being ethical and honest. Medical doctors are number 2. Pharmacists are number 3. High school teachers are 4th from the top. This one I can't believe. Police officers are number 5 from the top. People actually believe that cops are honest and have ethics. I think they're misinformed, but I guess that is the Ministry of Propaganda is swaying public opinion to let them think that cops have ethics. Accountants are next. Funeral directors are next. Clergy, only 37% of people think that the clergy has a high degree of ethics. Journalists, 33%. Banking.
I find that particularly interesting, don't you?
Absolutely.
It may be overstated.
I think all these numbers are high, except I believe that most nurses really want to do a good job, and they have a degree of honesty and integrity and ethics. I believe that most doctors are the same. I think most pharmacists are the same. High school teachers, down from there. Police officers, I'd put at the bottom. Accountants, I don't have a particularly high regard for accountants because I look at what they have done to the manufacturing sector. I believe, and I'm probably one of very few who believe this, but I've been looking at what has happened to companies, and I believe that accountants have gone to the CEO saying, hey, we can reduce the cost of these products by, we don't have to use so much steel, we don't have to use so many screws, nuts, bolts, we don't have to use so much material. We can cut out this. Let's get the engineers to reduce the weight, the complexity, and so forth, and let's hook our customers onto a revenue stream where they have to keep paying us to keep these products working. Repairs, and we'll make them so that the customers can't fix anything themselves. So I think the accountants are really significant players in the blame game, or to be blamed for why we're having so many problems with losing the manufacturing sector. And, of course, politicians play in there. Clergy is at 37%, journalists 33%, building contractors at 29%. Can you imagine You're hiring a building contractor to build your house or your office building, and only 29% of us think that they're ethical and honest. Bankers are at 27%. They should probably be closer to the bottom. Real estate agents are at 25%. Stockbrokers 14%. Advertising practitioners 13%. Dr. Shealy, over the years, I've asked lots of young people this question. So what do you want to be if you grow up? You know, and no one, not one young person, I'm talking about very young as well as, early teens. What do you want to be if you grow up? Not one person has ever said, I want to be a car salesperson, or I want to be a used car salesman. Not one has said, I want to be a member of Congress. Even young people know that that those two professions are at the bottom, with only 8% of people thinking that they have ethics at a high level. Welcome, George in New Hampshire.
Hi, Vincent. Hi, Dr. Shealy.
Morning.
Yeah, I just wanted to just weigh in and say, you know and I know you have honesty and integrity, you say, and what happens after that, it's up to the person. But and I know it's like it's being stretched where somewhere along the supply chain, the honest person has to kind of stretch and kind of make up for the shortfall caused by people who either didn't care or were dishonest or just, lied through their teeth. And the problem is you can see how it's breaking down. And it's breaking down across the board because, and I know that you can't run a country like this without decent and moral and honest people.
Absolutely.
By the way,
agree. Yes, Dr. Shealy.
I'm sorry.
very low members of Congress in honesty is the general listing. It's way below clergy.
Yeah, I remember being asked about church and things at an event I went to recently, and my comment just kind of came out. I said, well, I haven't been to church in a long time, and that's because I'm afraid, as someone who's raised Roman Catholic, that a priest might think of me as a young man. And I didn't want to be anywhere near.
The sad thing is, though, gentlemen, is that you have decent people who go in for legitimate, honest reasons. But you have infiltrators, and you have individuals who enter into these institutions with the sole purpose of wanting to be like a termite boring from within. And they'll let a lot of things pass by, and they'll just turn the other way and not even look at it, partly out of cowardice, partly out of just they're not playing for the same team. So the decent ones get painted with the same brush. Because, when I was growing up, I went to Catholic schools. I know you did. And I'm just saying, I'm sure Dr. Shealy can attest to this too, is that, like when Dr. Shealy, when you had that dangerous medical procedure that was getting that $2 million grant back in 1960, that doesn't sound like much nowadays, but you went to your bishop, who happened to be on the board, and you couldn't live with yourself knowing that this was harming patients and they were going to go full speed ahead with it. I'm just saying, but your bishop back then was a man of integrity. He did something about it. He voted on the board, and they turned the money down. But what I'm saying is that, where are those men today?
Right. Where are those men today? And where are the good cops that I keep hearing? Oh, there's so many good cops. Where are those cops that are routing out these pedophile cops or these bad cops? Where are they? You don't hear about them because they just turn the other way. They turn a blind eye to the criminality because they want to protect their pension. And if you look at government employees, what they do is, you can ask any one of them when they're going to retire. They'll tell you. They'll tell you to the day when they're going to retire. They can't wait to retire. So that means they hate their jobs. I mean, when I was working, I had no idea when I was going to retire. I still don't know when I'm going to retire. because I don't think about retiring. It hasn't crossed my mind. Hey, Vinny, when do you think you're going to stop working? I haven't thought about that. George, it's always good to hear from you. Thank you. Thank you for being with us. Do you have anything in the last 10 seconds?
No, I'm just glad to be associated with you gentlemen, birds of a feather.
Yeah,
hey, keep the faith, everybody.
Yes, honesty and integrity. What happens next
is
up to you.